Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, The Hidden Threat of Email Decay, Strategies to Improve Your Database and Deliverabilities, produced by Marketing Profs and sponsored by ZeroBounce. I'm Jeffrey Thomas, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. Before we begin, a few updates and housekeeping notes. If you experience any audio or visual problems, please try to refresh the page or log out and log back in. If you're on Wi-Fi or have multiple applications open, it could impact your viewing experience. So when in doubt, close it out. Check out the right-hand side panel for some fun engagement options. You can use the chat to connect with fellow marketers, and you can reply and send reactions to other comments by hovering over them. Please use the Q&A tab to submit questions for our speakers. In there, you can also upvote your favorite questions, and as soon as our presentation is done, we will get to as many questions as we can, and we'll start with the most popular. There's a PDF of the deck available to download in the Resources tab. It looks like 2 sheets of paper, and if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see an emoji button. Feel free to share your reactions throughout today's presentation. I'd like to take a minute to thank ZeroBounce for sponsoring today's webinar. ZeroBounce is an award-winning email deliverability platform that helps 400,000 plus customers reach the inbox. Its suite includes 99% accuracy for email validation, warm-up, demarc and blacklist monitors, and email testing. With over 23 billion emails validated, the team helps businesses of every size and in every industry. Now, please join me in welcoming Brian Minnick, who is presenting The Hidden Threat of Email Decay, Strategies to Improve Your Database and Deliverability. Brian is the Chief Operating Officer at ZeroBounce and an email deliverability and thought leader. He has 15 plus years of experience in tech and in marketing, and he is passionate about helping businesses reach the inbox, avoid the spam filter, and drive email ROI. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brian. Brian, please take it away.
Sure. Thank you, Jeffrey. And thank you, everyone, for joining today. Thank you, Marketing Profs, as well, for having us. I'm really excited to talk about this topic with everybody, which is the kind of hidden threat of email decay and what are some things you guys can do to improve your database and improve your deliverability. So with that, I will get things going. I think we already kind of did a quick intro. I'm just going to hold here for 1 second because I do want to encourage anyone, if I've earned it yet, but I probably haven't. So maybe at the end, I will re-earn it. Your ability to connect with me on LinkedIn. I love talking with people. I love hearing about the individual cases that come up. And I'm always actually very available there and happy to kind of engage with anybody. So if you would like, I'll hold it up just in another second. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. And I'll have another one here at the end if I haven't built enough trust for that yet. And that's cool if so. A little bit about ZeroBounce, like Jeffrey already kind of said, we're email verification for a ton of major large brands and over 400,000 so far in the ecosystem. We're helping lots of customers improve their deliverability. So I'm sharing with you today kind of the experience that we're learning and that I'm getting hands-on experience with firsthand through our own company and through conversations with our clients. So these are all relevant topics for marketers. So I'm very excited to share this content with you guys today. So let's get it going. And by the way, I am going to be kind of looking at some of the chat stuff. I might answer a question or two if I can. So I definitely encourage it. And please do put anything in the Q&A and upvote it if it's a good one. So I definitely want to get to it. So what makes email such a critical marketing and sales tool? I really love this topic. For so many reasons, right? Number one, it's timeless. I don't know of another communication channel other than phone, TV, maybe phone, TV, email have been around long enough, and there's really no slowing down of it. Radio as well. Let's throw that one in there. So, it's been around since the 70s. There's no slowing down. If anything, I'm seeing a ramp up, right? So more and more people are engaging with email. More people are creating email accounts. Email is more and more important. I remember 20 years ago when I started building websites and I was like, you guys really need to put email addresses on your domain. But they're like, why? I have a Gmail account. That's all I need. So, we've evolved with email, but it hasn't gone away. It's only kind of strengthened. And then number two is it's very dependable. And I wanted to bring this bullet up today because to me, like this is also very topical. There's all this stuff going on with TikTok, right? Social media trends can change. Is TikTok going away from the US? There's X, that had a major change. Facebook, all these kind of different platforms, right? And what really kind of highlighted the downfall of these platforms was that it wasn't your audience. And it never was, by the way. It was always their audience that you had access to. And so I always found that very interesting and see that as such a major difference between email addresses and social media platforms or other communication channels. On the email side, you own that data. Now, don't come after me. I know what you're thinking. I'm not saying own it, but you can take it with you where you want. You can change your sending platform. You can, do other things with it. But on those social media channels where people put a lot of energy into it, yes, they're great. I'm certainly not discouraging any of it, but you don't really that data is not yours to take where you want to do, take it where you want to go or bring it and do what you want to do with it. So I would just highly encourage this. On the social media side, do your best to collect the emails of your audience. And so send them to places that might collect the email addresses or do whatever. But I just want to mention that I think it's so important, and we get very focused on social, and I understand it. We do it too. But is it dependable? That's the question. And how many times does the platform of the decade, year, whatever, keep changing? So the audiences on email, they're obviously, for the most part, they're opted in, right? These are people who want to hear from you. They can learn more stuff about you, and you can learn more about them based on their behaviors. You have a little bit more tracking that's going on. You can understand who's actually engaging, who turns into a purchase, all these type of things, where social media can get obviously a little bit more fuzzy as to what's going on. And then the revenue potential, I think this is obvious. I think we all still know this. Where is better ROI than on email? So it's cost efficient and it's measurable. And that's, these are big items to make sure you have when you're talking about the different stuff you're doing with communicating with your clients. So I want to touch on this. I love this slide. And I want to make sure that we're all kind of thinking about the downfalls of other channels where email really shines, which is kind of the again, don't come after me, please. The ownership of having, being able to take that audience wherever you would like. So now that we are talking about email, right? There's a couple of questions that you have to ask yourself about your email database. So I know you guys are all marketers, and I know a lot of you are doing primarily B2B marketing. Of course, there's going to be some B2C in here, but what is what are some questions that people are asking about their database? And one thing that I want to touch on here, and if you take nothing else out of the presentation today, hopefully you remember this. Please focus on quality and not quantity when you talk about email, okay? And it's very easy to get hung up on quantity, and I get it. I really, really do. But there's a lot of things about email that quantity is not always in your favor. And I'm going to highlight some of them. So a couple questions to ask yourself. Is this email address valid, right? What does valid mean? I'll even ask a question to a question. What does valid even mean? So it's a deliverable inbox, meaning that there's a recipient on the other end. Okay, so it's not going to bounce. It's not going to sit there. It's stagnant. It's not going to be kind of a risky send. And then does this address pose any additional risk? This question is so commonly overlooked. I don't even want to say overlooked. It's not even thought about, because most people that I'm coming across, they're really just focused on quantity. And this is where you start to shift your head of what is your email database? Is it quality or is it quantity? And ask yourself that question. Which one is it? And if you don't know, it's probably quantity, by the way. So if you do know, it's probably quality. But there's additional risk to different types of emails that are out there. And there's spam traps. For anyone that doesn't really know what a spam trap is, they're designated emails to blacklist you if you send an email to it. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. There's also complainers. These are email addresses that are known to mark as spam. So it's not necessarily that they don't want your content, but we have a lot of history on these people. And we know that there's a lot of emails that they're opted in, by the way, and they're still marking your emails as spam. And some of it is just behavioral traits of the recipient. So that is how they manage their inbox. That could be a reason, or they really didn't want your content, of course. But some people manage their email box as marked as spam. And I'm going to be honest with you. My mom does it. And I saw her do this, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. What are you doing? And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm marking it as red. I go, no, you marked it as spam. No, I marked it. I moved on, because it closes the screen. So each different tool that you use, AOL, for example, they make it actually easier to mark as spam than mark as red. Okay. So there's different things that are happening out there, and it's not always intentional, but guess who reaps the effect of that? You guys already know this answer. It's you. So be careful with it and just kind of know your audience. Then there's toxic domains. There's these bots that are hitting the forums. There's a whole bunch of random stuff out there. Are those type of email addresses on your list? And most likely they probably are. And then does anyone still use this email address? This one is a really important question that I don't think enough people ask themselves because they're, again, really still focused on that quantity thing. So is this email address, is there a recipient on the other end of it? That's a really good question, because think about this. How many email addresses have you gone through in your lifetime that you no longer use, but you know you set it up, you've abandoned it, you've done whatever it is? And so even on B2B, I'm still seeing this concept. And I'll give you an example. The previous company that I worked with 7 years ago, my email address is still active. Sorry, enabled is actually the right word. So it is enabled, but I've left that company 7 years ago. Has anyone else been here? I see some smiley faces, so this is relatable. How do I know this? I validated it with my own software. But still, I know that email address is still active. And I know many other colleagues of mine at that time who are no longer there are still active in enabled email addresses. So is anyone still using it? And there's signals and there's other things that we can use to make sure that who we're sending to are active emails. And why is that important, by the way? If you're, I don't know the knowledge of every single person here on the call today, but the engagement of your campaigns is what's going to determine your performance. Okay. So when you're sending 1,000 emails, but 900 of them never get opened, never reply, never click, never do anything, that's a 10% engagement rate, right? I'm just using easy numbers and I'm making numbers up for sake of conversation. But if you took out 600 of those inactive people, you now have 100 out of 400 that are engaging, and you now have a 25% engagement rate. Do you see the difference? So sending to people that don't really exist on the other end, that doesn't really mean that's a good thing. That goes back to the quality over quantity. So at ZeroBounce, we see a ton of emails coming through our platform. And just to be super clear, we're very, very passionate about the security and privacy. So there's no actual emails. We just have statuses. And what we are seeing when we aggregate this data is just a continued increased trend of decay. And so, what is decay? It's email addresses that are turning over or churning, and it can be for a number of reasons, and I'll go over some of them. But we saw a 28% churn in 2024 of email addresses coming through our platform. And by the way, we've been measuring this since we've been in the beginning here. The number's only getting bigger. And last year, that was based on over 10 billion emails. This is no small chunk. So when you talk about a 1%, a 3% increase, that's a big number. And the most common reason was an invalid email address. So out of 10 billion emails that we saw, 2.5 billion were invalid, which left about 60% being valid and then some risky, some gray area in between. It's a very interesting stat. And it's something that, if you really start to think about it, makes more sense, right? We're all starting to get really more engaged with email. We see different trends. We're seeing a lot of different things that are happening. Gosh, I can remember when my whole family had one email address. My mom, my dad, me, my brother, we had one email address. And that was, come on, I'm not alone here. Somebody else has this. So how has that changed? Well, I now have 6 email addresses. My brother probably has 5. My mom still has 1. Let me just actually be clear on that. She still only has 1. But we're changing, we're evolving, we're doing more things, and then we abandon things when they become a mess. So I know people that have email addresses. I'm sure there's people here on the call. You have an email address that is used for your actually important stuff. Maybe that's where you file taxes on, or whatever you're doing there, or your pay stubs or whatever it is. And then you have a promotions one. You have maybe an e-commerce email address. These are all really common things that we're seeing. So the number of email addresses that we're seeing be created are increasing, and the number of emails that are going invalid are increasing. So overall, email is still just increasing. I would highly encourage, if anyone would like to view the full report, this QR code will bring you right to it. And it's basically our stats from 2024. It's what we have seen come across the different, the variety of clients that come through us as well is insane. I'm talking bankers to healthcare to gaming to, it doesn't matter. Marketers, CMOs, Fortune 500 companies, it doesn't matter. All this data, there's still a consistent pattern of email decay. And, two of the numbers up top, the two ones, right? Valid, invalid, those are self-explanatory. But add those numbers up. That's only 83%. So what's the 17%, right? So we have catch-alls, okay. But then you go look at this last kind of 3-4%. Abuse emails. These are people who are known to mark you as spam. 1.7% out of 10 billion emails are people that are going to mark you as spam. That's a scary number. If anybody knows the actual stats that are kind of mandated by Google, Yahoo, this is all, recent as of last year, 0.1% is your real threshold. I think they're still being generous with a 0.2 or 0.3% where they're not going to really penalize you too much. But you want to be under 0.1%, which means for every 1,000 emails you send, only one gets marked as spam. That's hard. That's hard. And that's a hard number to constantly stay under, by the way. And then you have these do not mail addresses. I want to go back into this on the quality side. So what's do not mail, and why would we even categorize something as do not mail? Well, because there's risk that's associated with it. Do not mail could be these group email addresses or role-based, sometimes we'll call them. Info at, sales at, support at, all these kind of different things. That's not always the best email address. It depends upon your business. It depends upon being able to look and see, why would I want this email or why would I not want this email address? There's a lot of different things out there. And then, of course, there's spam traps, which thankfully is a very, very low number of people, but they're still out there. And it only takes one spam trap to kind of affect you. And I commonly get questions like, I don't really have these issues, or this isn't the issue that I really have, or whatever it might be. I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but just to help educate more, deliverability is where I play. So I know the deliverability space really well, and I'm surrounded by people that know deliverability in an insane level, levels that even shocked me. And I started to learn significant things. Each network, and by each network, I mean really each provider, Google, Yahoo, AOL, Outlook, whatever, they are building their own reputation on you, okay? It's not an aggregate. There is no central, this is how you look out to the world. They are built individually because these companies are not talking to each other. These spam filters don't talk to each other. They're building their own logic independently, just like these social media channels, right? They're not talking to each other. They build everything about you independently. So you might have a great reputation in Gmail, but you might have a poor reputation in Yahoo. And you might have some other issues somewhere else, but be great somewhere else. That's very common. And a lot of people kind of underthink it actually, and aren't paying attention that each network can give you a different outcome. So what's happening, and like, why are we getting so much of this decay? And so we went down that research chain as well, right? And what's happening is we can kind of put into some major buckets. One, the email addresses that were acquired were never valid in the first place. This is common. It's actually a lot more common than you might think. So if we're talking about the email address that's getting inputted into the sign-up forms, the newsletters on the website, right? Let's think website. Let's think social media, where they do help you collect that email address. Do you know how many people just smash the keyboard to get past your gate? And they're bypassing the most simple syntax check, right? It has an address, it has an @ symbol, it has something else, and then it has a .com. That is so simple to get past. So the email address was never valid in the first place. We see that a lot on forums. And then now that you did have a valid email address, you did acquire something, the next big category is the email address is now outdated, especially in B2B. So we're seeing the amount of churn that's happening. I mean, look what's happening in real time. Like this week, this month, last week, 2 weeks ago, there's an insane amount of churn happening, especially if you're sending emails to the government right now. I mean, gosh, churn is going to go crazy there, right? And so these email addresses are getting outdated, or they've moved jobs, or whatever it might happen. And then there's another big category, which is something that I'm seeing more and more. This is a growing category, by the way, and a lot of people are not aware of them. Disposable email addresses, commonly called temporary email addresses, but how I prefer to call them are burner email addresses. Burner email addresses are exactly as they sound. They are, you can go to websites, and there's not only hundreds of these and not only thousands of these, there's tens of thousands of websites that you can get an email address on the fly created for you. with no clicking at all. You just hit the home page and boom, you have an inbox. This email address can send and receive. Okay, so if they put that email address into your form and you send them an email to click to confirm, they can get right past everything you're trying to accomplish on getting a good email address. That email address is disposable, and that's how the user is thinking about it. They can abandon that page from the website that they got that email address, and boom, that email address is now invalid. The typical life cycle of those is 1 hour to 24 hours old. So what does that mean? That means you sent your welcome email, maybe, I don't know. But then you did that first campaign, boom, bounce, hard bounced. What the heck? Just got this yesterday. These email addresses are out there. They're gaining popularity for a few reasons. Number one, it helps people stay anonymous. And by the way, I'm not talking about these Apple created email addresses. I'm talking about these are on business domains that are random, that you can create the prefix of the email address. I can put Brian at, so everything looks real. You wouldn't really know that this is a disposable email, but they're out there. So be careful about these ones. There's good reasons for these too, by the way. And I do want to highlight that. We have a lot of companies that are charities or accept donations, and they actually love the disposable emails. They don't care, I should say, because they're maybe getting a donation in a sense. And so they want to recognize that it's disposable, but they want it to proceed past what they're doing, past any of the gates. So yeah, they want to accept the donation, but no, maybe they actually don't want to send them a thank you letter. And that's a good use case on both sides of that equation, by the way. So it's quite okay. These are normal. Get used to them. If you don't know about them, I would highly just recommend you getting educated on them because they're there. And whether you like it or not, they're there. The normal email address lifecycle, this is common. I think a lot of people generally understand this, but people are changing jobs. They're leaving the positions. They're abandoning old emails. They're getting new ones. I'm at a point where I'm getting to this point, but I kind of refuse to do it. Security concerns, compromised accounts. I mean, if that's not a topic, I don't know what is. And then recycle due to inactivity. This is actually a major one. So a lot of the Google, Yahoo, all these different types of email addresses, generally they're consumer email addresses. And I know that's not really what you guys are sending to, but it's important to understand the concept, which is they are disabling these accounts because they're not active. And the companies such as Google, Yahoo, they're paying to store all that data, to keep storing the inbox, keep storing all the mail, but they're abandoned. And so what they're doing is they're giving it a life cycle. Most of them are about 2 years. You might even, if you had an old Google account, you might start getting these if you haven't already. But it's going to say, hey, you haven't checked email, you haven't replied, you haven't hooked this up to a mobile phone. There's no activity from a receiver's end at all. And we're going to recycle this and basically disable it. What they're trying to do is release it back into the public for people to be able to acquire again. And that's because it's impossible. Good luck trying to get your name, unless you're like me or hopefully some people on here that created their Gmail or AOL or whatever, 20 years ago, where you could actually get your name. There's no chance of getting it today. And so that's kind of the concept. They want to bring that back because they don't want to start introducing all these new domains. So why is the decay of email a threat to my business? This is the really important part. It is a threat. And the reason it's a threat is because it's going to come with a lot of negative effects if you're sending to these low quality and invalid email addresses. Your bounce rate's going to spike. And whether that bounce rate is spiking, again, the reason of it does not matter. Okay, it's just the fact that it's happening. So high bounce rates basically are indicators to the mail servers and the spam filters to say, this is probably a spammer. Why would they be sending to email addresses that have such a high bounce rate? Now, by the way, I want to focus on this for a second. Businesses that are having high churn right now, it is important that you're checking to see what's going on with your list on that domain. I know a lot of companies that send emails to hundreds of people on the same domain. I'm seeing huge layoffs everywhere. That could give you a really quick spike in bounce rate if you're not kind of understanding what's happening with that audience. So just be aware. These are real life scenarios that are happening to real people. We have people in the gaming industry. Do you have any idea how many people abandon emails from the gaming industry? My God, it's insane. And so the high bounce rates, they're going to equal lower engagement rates. All of these things start to really chip away And depending upon the severity of it, they're hurting your sender reputation. Hopefully, you're all aware of what sender reputation is. However, it is a mystery for a lot of people, and you're not alone. So what is sender reputation? How do I build it? How do I kill it? How do I monitor it? These are all really good questions. For anyone who's not doing it, Postmaster tools from Google. So postmaster.google.com, totally free tool, an amazing one to kind of manage and to monitor your sending reputation. But if your sending reputation is low, everything else is low. Okay. So that means your good emails that you're sending to the good people are probably in spam. You have less visibility. Your open rates are way down. Your click-through rates are way down. Your ROI is way down. And then you start to get comfortable down there and just determine that, well, that's just what it is for us. No, I can almost guarantee you there's something probably else going on, but maybe you're just not aware of it. The reputation, especially poor sending reputation, is just sabotaging. And here's something that I have been able to thankfully identify, and I'm so excited to share it with you guys, is that there is a concept that people are not always grasping. And I know you're all marketing folks, or mainly marketing folks, but have you ever had a conversation with the sales manager in your organization and understood what they're doing? Have you understood where they get their data from? Do they send on your domain? These are important questions. There is nobody that will butcher your sending reputation faster than a sales team. Stamp it, trademark that, whatever you want to do. There is nobody that will butcher your sending reputation faster than a sales team. Are they doing it on purpose? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Do they have any clue, like thinking about like you guys? Nope, they sure aren't. What's sales thinking about? And let's just be real. You're the sales manager. What's your job? Grow revenue. How am I going to grow revenue? More customers. How do I get more customers? Buy data. Send a mail. Get meetings. I need 10 meetings per month per rep. Cool. How do they do that? They blast email, right? We've all been there. But is marketing even aware what sales is doing? That's the question. Marketing guys, if it's helpful, tell the salespeople, do what you want to do on your own domain, not on my domain, not on the business domain. You're killing me. Customer service. There's another one. These guys can play to your favor. Okay, so on the customer service side, they should be sending probably from the main domain. They're probably helping you. If you're using a ticketing system, no one's going in there and marking this stuff as spam. This isn't really like an area that people dislike. They want to have problems. They want the responses. So your deliverability is going to be really good coming from customer service. Marketing is going to play definitely on the higher side of good. But sorry, sales is probably going to chip away at you a little bit on the negative side. So think about that. And just try to communicate more than anything. Understand where they get their data from. Understand all these different things because it's important. And it's important to your business, by the way. It's important to your ROI. So I have a little bit of a checklist for you guys to help defend against this stuff. These are tools, tactics. It's going to help you kind of maintain and maximize deliverability. And I would encourage you also to share some of this stuff, especially with your sales team. You have to clean the database with a verification system. Okay, this used to be, I don't want to say used to be. This wasn't something top of mind for people 5-10 years ago. I get it. This is important. This is now imperative. What we're seeing is the amount of bad data that's going in there. You have to be cleaning this stuff up. So you have to make sure that invalid data is getting out. You have to get those outdated emails out. And you need to understand where is that area, right? So we have the good emails, the valid. We have the bad emails, the invalid. But that in between, the gray area, is risk. You have to assess that risk and you have to understand how bad that risk is. And do you want to assume that risk and actually move on with it? Sometimes you might, but sometimes you probably don't. And there's just good ways to do it if you can identify that. Trying to do it manually, by the way, impossible. Absolutely impossible. There's no way to do it. You can't look at the database and go, this one's good, this one's bad. You need intelligence. And so that's really what kind of verification will help you with as well. It's not just a binary, which is what is commonly thought, by the way. It's like, oh, good, the email's good or it's bad. No, there's a lot more behind it that is going to give you intelligence. Maybe you want to segment by the provider. Maybe you're doing great in Gmail. Good, send a Gmail first, then go down the list. but you can segment all those type of things. And I'm not talking about Gmail, I'm talking about G Suite, right? So get down to the MX record, get down to the domain age, get down to all these different kind of concepts. It'll help you improve the ROI. It's going to slow you down, I'll be very honest, but ROI will come up. And so you have to balance that. Which one do you need more? Clean the database up, reduce the bounce rate and the spam rate. This is a big one. So those known complainers, like I said, they're not necessary. They're valid emails, by the way. That's a great example. It's a valid email, but do I want to send the email to them? Yes or no? I don't know. I can't answer that for your business, but you can. Are these people I want to send to? Do you want to maybe send them only the super important emails and not every email every time? That could be another question. But all this is going to improve your inbox placement. And we all know the money is made in the inbox. It's not made in the spam folder. No one's checking spam at this point. I barely check it when someone tells me to check it. I'm like, well, why are you there in the first place? So, there's a lot of things there. Just pay attention. Understand that it's not black and white, and your email address is not good or bad. There is in between, and the in between is what you need to understand. Another way to do it, another huge way to do it, and it's actually so incredibly valuable, is check it with the user in real time. Okay, so when someone is on your forms or when someone is submitting data, whatever it might be, you can check to see if that email address is good while the user is still there. Again, I'm not talking about syntax. That's basic. That's JavaScript from 1988. Okay, I'm talking about in real time, connect to the mailbox. Does it exist? Yes, cool, let them through. This can all happen in milliseconds. Block the invalid data, but more importantly, correct typos. That's a huge one. Mobile is still huge. We all know this. And B2B, there's no, you can't dismiss mobile even on the business side. We dismiss it on a purchasing. I'll be very honest with you. People aren't coming to our website and purchasing on their iPhones, but are they researching? Are they signing up? Are they signing up for the newsletter because it was late at night and they were like, this is cool, I'll sign up for that. Yeah. So there's a lot of web traffic. I don't know what just happened right there. A lot of web traffic that's still going through that your APIs and your forms can connect to. And there's a lot of things that can also happen to make it easier for you to do that. I want to show you what I'm talking about. So on the left-hand side, this is a sample form. It's very common. You might only even have email address, but whether you have more fields, it doesn't matter. On the right-hand side is a validation that's taking place in real time. So all you're doing is sending us that email address, and in real time, we're coming back with all these different data points of things that might be valuable to you. And if you notice, under the status, we say invalid. Substatus, meaning why is it invalid, is because we're recognizing that this is a typo. Do you see the gmail.com? This is very common. AIL.com, very common. Look down at your keyboards. How many times do you think a user has hit your website and just hit one key off of their email address? This happens a lot. So whether they typo the domain or typo the prefix, the address part, this is definitely going to be something that can come up. And here's the beauty. Here's the ROI. It's a double whammy. We're going to give you the real email address. And you can even present that back to your user. We have some really incredible companies, Strava being one of them, a very large fitness app. We have recovered so many typoed emails for them because they implemented this exact process right here. Because what's happening? All their people sign up on mobile. And so it's very common. I've had this as a problem before. And what I did to correct it was I created like a typo shortcut on my phone. So I just hit @ and then my email address goes into a field. Like I created an autocorrect for that. By the way, great life hack. Want to recommend that, especially on the iPhones. I don't know how to do it on Android, but great life hack to make sure you never mistype your email address. But no one's doing that. That's just me because I see this stuff from a different level. So it's really important. You can do stuff. You can correct and grab the right email addresses here in real time while the user's still in front of you, by the way. Because if he gave you this wrong one and you never fix it, how would you ever be able to get in contact with this person again? You'd have to manually catch it, which, let's be honest, who's doing that? Not much. Case study, right? So real life, let's talk just besides what I'm showing you on a global scale. Let's talk about an individual. Belkins came to us and said, hey, I'm having a massive problem with bounce rate. Can you guys help us out? And we said, of course. and let's talk about what's going on. Can we do a case study with you? We're very close with Belkins. I do webinars with them all the time. And he's like, enough's enough. I need your help. So we went through and did it. They had a 19% bounce rate caused by invalid emails. And the kicker was spam traps all over the place. Now, did they grab bad data? No. But they were grabbing data from different sources that could have spam traps in it. And I'm going to talk about that. But the impact was their engagement was terrible. And again, I feel terrible for anyone that's dealing with this, because I know the process. I used to be the guy who would design the email, prep the list, send the test emails to me and 30 other colleagues and go one by one and ask them what it looked like on their cell phone, because I cared about the rendering and all of this. I understand the amount of time and effort that goes into every single campaign that goes out. And by the way, I never wrote the content. So if you're writing the content and doing all of that, I know that's a ton of time. But what was happening was they had such bad quality of the data that they were being thrown into spam, and their sending reputation was just declining. They had low quality of results, but in reality is they didn't have a clue what was good and what was bad. And that's the problem that most people need to just understand. You'll never know what's the good and what's the bad unless you clean it up. There's just no other way. They went through, we ran the verification with them. We went from a 19% bounce rate to a 0.4 bounce rate on the next send. That's massive, right? Their reputation increased, their visibility increased, and their engagement rate started to quickly improve. Remember, the mail servers look at you in a percentage game. This is a percentage game. So if you have 10 people, 10's too small. If you have 1,000 people that open your email, that's the numerator, right? But the denominator determines percentage. And so if your denominator is kind of unnaturally inflated due to bad data, you cared about quantity and not quality as much, the denominator is growing, but your numerator is not. Okay. Engagement rates, percentages, are what are going to build the stuff for the mail servers. So we want to lower the denominator. We don't want to remove good stuff, by the way. We just want to lower it to make sure that the stuff we are sending to is getting a good crack at giving you the best visibility that you can. So that was what was going on with Belkins. When we worked with Margot, this is the reaction that she said. She gave us a testimonial. We certainly appreciate it. She's the CMO over there. We saw that many of our emails weren't reaching customers. It led to missed opportunities and decreased customer satisfaction. We also encountered issues with spam traps, which began to harm our sending reputation and risked getting us and our domains blacklisted. So I'm going to spend a second on this for a minute. I don't think that made sense, but that's okay. So spam traps, there's two types of spam traps for most people that are not aware. There's recycled and there's pristine. Recycled spam traps are being generated by usually the large providers, Gmail, AOL, Yahoo, these type of things. And their email addresses that are basically abandoned. So if we go back to what I was talking about with the disabled side, these are abandoned emails that the provider then flips them over a certain period of time. I don't know their logic because that's them. But let's say 3 years later of total abandonment of the user, they turn it into a spam trap because this email is not signing up for things. It's not double opting in. It's not clicking. It's not doing anything. There's no engagement. So now anyone sending to these emails, you're going to get thrown on a blacklist automatically. And that is the spam provider's way to try to identify spammers. Because how'd you get the email? That's the question. How did you get it? The only way you got is by buying it, scraping it, or doing something kind of in a bad way. And by the way, bad way, let's define that. How are people getting the data? I'm going to wait. I have a slide on it. I'm so excited to talk about this part. But the reputation is just important. And you don't want to be on blacklists. Blacklists are what's going to really kind of kill you when it comes to the performance of the campaign. So the before 19%, the after 0.4%. Please scan the QR code, grab the case study, and review it. I mean, this is probably this is a common case. This is something we see a lot, and we do a lot of case studies on this as well. The next one could be cleaning. How can you do it? Through the integrations. If the best way I can share this is clean it at your source, okay? Or clean it before it ever goes into that source, actually. So what do I mean? Well, generally speaking, I don't know what everyone's using here, but we use HubSpot. So HubSpot is our CRM. That is where the data flows to first. Besides the fact that we're using our own tool on our own platforms. But besides that, Let's say we're not. You'd want to be cleaning the data up either before it's in HubSpot, or if you don't have that capability, then we have integrations, or there's integrations, lots of companies doing integrations towards these tools, clean it up in HubSpot, because that's now generally going to be your feeder out to all your other systems, your mailing platforms, or maybe you just use HubSpot, that's fine, or whatever CRM you're using. But there's a ripple effect of this that when I start to talk about it, sometimes I've realized people aren't thinking about it. Do you know how much you pay to store contacts in these systems? Now, HubSpot's a different one. They don't really charge for that. But these mailing servers, these ESPs, they're charging you based on how many recipients are in there. So you're paying to store, on average, 28% more data than you actually should, because that's statistically what we're seeing as going to be a higher churn. And by the way, B2B data churns a lot higher than B2C. So that was a blend, 28%. B2B data can be anywhere in the 30s up into the low 40s. We've seen that as well. But being able to integrate it at that level, that's when you start to reduce the process. You can automate it. For example, we use HubSpot, right? We only validate the email when it signs up. So it creates an account on ZeroBounce. We validate it, of course. And then it goes into HubSpot. Well, then what? So every 30 days, we then go back and re-clean the whole entire HubSpot database automatically. It's happening without anyone doing anything. And that's just done by simple integration. So there's a lot of stuff you guys can do to make sure that everything is pushed and kind of maintains a clean and healthy stance. Or use an API, use Zapier, Clay. There's a lot of different stuff there as well. And there's a lot of good ways to get the data and make sure it stays clean. How often should I clean my database? I'm going to spend a few minutes on this. Not that topic, but that third bullet. How trustworthy is your data provider? So if that's a question you have or not thinking about, I want to get your wheels turning on that one. How often should I clean the data? B2B data should be cleaned every quarter. Can you get away with every 6 months? Of course. Can you get away with washing your sheets twice a year? Yeah, you can. Do I recommend it? No. So, cleaning the data, especially on B2B once per quarter, I'd highly recommend it. If you can, I would do it more often, but it's not necessary. Think about the numbers I said. 28% is churning every year. In the B2B space, it's higher actually. So if 30% of the data is churning every year, that means 7% of it is churning every quarter. Can you afford a 7% bounce rate? Can you afford, spam traps that are being turned into accounts that are going to disabled status? Probably not. 6 months on the B2C data, we do see that churn less often. Mainly the churn there is, again, due to abandonment or turned into a spam trap or something of that nature. But you do want to pay attention to that stuff. And it depends also a little bit on how often you send and the type of volume that you send and how often you're getting new contacts. So if you're somebody that's getting contacts, only through the website and you use a double opt-in process, your churn's going to be lower. That's completely fair. But to the next bullet, really want to spend some time, is where are you getting the data from? That is my number one question. And marketers, if you're getting it, most likely, and I hope you're getting it in the best practices, you're following all the best practices, but there's that sales team, right? And the sales team, where are they getting that data from? So are we talking about the providers that sell data? I'm not going to name any. I know you all know some. And take one of those names, whatever one it is, I don't care. Do you think that they are saying to themselves, we need to sell quality, or do they need to sell quantity? And the answer is a blend of both, right? That's actually the answer. How do I know this? Because I've talked to them. A lot of them use us. But as much as they say they validate the data, which, by the way, all these guys are going to tell you that. I validate the data, of course. I can tell you for a fact that they did validate the data, but probably 4 years ago when they acquired it. And so what's actually the status of it today? How trustworthy is your data provider? I would just encourage you guys to kind of lean on the side of caution. And I think I even have another slide on this because it's really important. Use the real-time verification to get a better barrier in front of the data sources that are coming in. So use verification on your sign-up forms. This is so important. The ROI on it is significant. We're talking about fractions of a penny to understand if this is a good email address or not. That is, can I say that? That is pennies compared to the dollars you will make. You have to understand what's going on. It has to be good data. After you keep the data clean, and after you've got it clean, things to keep in mind. What's the acquisition process? So are we all sending the data into HubSpot or whatever your CRM is? Do all salespeople blend the data in with marketing who blends it in with support? Be aware of that. That can cause some issues, especially if people are just doing the quick importing and they're not really tagging, they're not doing a good job segmenting, they're not putting them in their own list, they're not separating them out for marketing. I have seen CRMs turn into the biggest hot mess, bird's nest of data, and no one knows where to start. And then no one knows who to blame, but I can tell you who's dealing with it. It's marketing. So if that's you, a good place to start is to clean the data up. If you're going to buy data, again, there's two types of ways that people think I buy data or I don't buy data. Number one is that email that comes to you from an Outlook email that says, hey, I have all of the ZeroBounce users. I have all of ZeroBounce's competitors. Would you like to buy the data list? Please don't ever buy that. They've sold that list 1,000 times to a million different companies. And all they're doing is changing the subject, or they're scraping data, and it's awful. It's full of spam traps. It's full of bad emails. Don't do it. That's what people think about when they say, do you buy data, yes or no? And then they say no. And they say, okay, cool. Well, where do you get the data from? Well, I get it from this big company called X. I'm not going to say the name or a name. And I'm like, okay, oh, so that's not buying data. Cool. How does that work? Oh, well, I segment all of the CMOs in the California region that are interested in pets. What? That's buying data. So that's buying data, guys. Just to be clear, you are buying that data just because you paid for it at a significant level and that has a big logo that people know. It doesn't mean you didn't buy it. So you have to play cautiously with that stuff. You have to scrutinize the provider a little bit and make sure you understand where it came from. Default to no trust. I hate to say it, but it's just the truth. They don't care about your reputation at the end of the day. They care about you paying for the contacts, and they sell you contacts based on volume, not quality. So whose interests are in mind? Who's going to look out for you? Nobody, only you. So make sure you're looking at contacts that are good. Make sure you get things that are well and healthy into the ecosystem, and default to no trust. You can clean it up. People use this stuff all the time. I don't have any issue with it. I have an issue when they do nothing with that and just trust it. You can't do that. And I don't care the provider. There's not one provider that I'm confident, and I'm telling you, I'm working with a lot of them. There's not one of them that I can tell you with full confidence that every single time you get the data, it's been cleaned, because it's not. Some bonus tips as we're wrapping up here. Authentication. This is required. DMARC. If you guys aren't using DMARC, make sure you have it set up. It's required now by Google and Yahoo. Quite honestly, it should be required for everybody. I don't think the provider matters. DMARC, DMARC, if you're not familiar with it. Domain authentication, reporting and conformance. It builds trust with the ISPs. It sets policies. It basically authenticates the email. Okay, it's aligning things like SPF and DKIM. If I have lost you here, that's cool, no problem. It doesn't have to be that technical, but deep down it is. We can run quick reports and see what's going on and see if you need it, or see if you have it set up properly. By the way, a ton of people, I see this all the time. I have DMARC set up, and then I run the query. By the way, my background's total technical. I run the query, and it goes DMARC equals 1, P equals none, semicolon. I'm like, okay, cool. You have it, but it does absolutely nothing for you. DMARC is a reporting tool. Those reports have to be sent to something. So that policy does not really work. Monitor your reputation. Google Postmaster tools. Highly, highly encourage it. If you guys aren't using it, use it. Warm up. For the salespeople that have killed you, they need to get off your domain, and they need to probably use a warm-up tool, or they need to go on their own domain and use a warm-up tool. Warm-up basically is seeds that you can send to and get interaction with that will try to help repair your reputation damage. And then lastly, you have to test everything. And when I say test everything, I mean test everything. I'm not talking about rendering on the phone. I'm not talking about rendering on the iPad. I'm talking about testing all the different providers. Are you in spam for Google? Are you in spam for G Suite? Are you in spam for Proofpoint? Are you in spam for Comcast? It doesn't matter. There's so many different engines that are all running independently, and you have to test them to understand what's going on. And that's actually hard to do manually, by the way. You really want to have a provider that's got your back there and will kind of test it. I'm wrapping up here. I'm coming up on time, and I definitely see some good questions. I want to make sure I get to them. Come sign up for a free ZeroBounce account. You get all of these tools that are up here for free. We'll monitor your domain. We'll check your inbox placement. We'll do the verification. And by the way, these are not watermarked or branded services. These are full-blown services. We give it to you for free. We want you guys to use it. We also kind of have a 20% off. Use the code marketing profs. Hopefully, I have gained your trust and gained enough of your, enough that you would say, hey, I should connect with this guy. And I'm really not kidding. I'm very accessible. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. Please send me a message. I'm happy to walk through your specific case. I do this all the time. And I just really like it. So, with that, I want to thank everybody. And Jeffrey, I definitely will welcome you back. I'd love to get some Q&A.
Thanks, Brian. That was really interesting. I also have a tech background, so it's great to hear some of this. Let's get to some questions here. Audience, if you have a question for Brian, please use the Q&A tab located on the right-hand side panel and make sure you upvote the questions that you want answered. All right, we're going to start with Mimi asks, if he doesn't answer this by the end, Brian, what do we need to do to make sure Yahoo and Gmail addresses get to the recipient? I know rules change for these providers, but I'm not sure what we should be doing.
Yeah, good question. So, Mimi, what's required is a few things. Number one, you need to have DMARC set up, which is authentication of your domain. That's not hard to do. You also need to have that done properly. You need to have SPF and DKIM set up, which for the most part will be. The issues people run into, by the way, on especially SPF, is they move mail servers or move platforms and never change that SPF record to the new one. That is the most common problem I see because people are trying to fly and do that. So you have to, and by the way, removing the old platform. So a few things I see, generally speaking, SPF is the biggest killer. A lot of people create multiple SPF records. That's going to fail. That's going to cause problems for you. You need to have one good SPF record. And then also you need to have the unsubscribe links. That's common. The one-click unsubscribe. This is generally going to be provided by your ESP, so not too much to really know there. And then you need to stay under their thresholds, which is that 0.1% spam rate, under the 2% bounce rate. And these things apply to what they say is 5,000 emails or more. And actually, one thing I really want to touch on that, Yahoo and Gmail got together. We should talk about that. They got together and aligned. Like, holy crap. Who would ever thought that would have happened? So this is really important. Those items are really important to make sure you have set up. It's a good question.
All right, great. Charles asks, I've continued to send emails to, quote, unengaged contacts, end quote, because some will actually open emails after ignoring 15 to 20 emails in a row. Happens fairly often in his industry. Would you stop this practice?
That's a good one. So yes and no. It depends is actually my answer. I've recently been talking with someone who's in the tax industry. Okay, so they file taxes for, they're a CPA and they file taxes. Well, how many people are opening the emails in October, November? Not that many. How many are open in June? Not that many. How many open in January, February, and March? Everybody. So I would just say a little bit of it depends. If you're talking about only an open, that could be inflated by Apple, that could be inflated by other things. But if they are never engaging into replying or clicking, that's not really good. I would argue put them into a slower sequence and eventually roll them off. Send them a breakup email. Be like, fine, I get it. You don't like me. Do whatever you want, but I wouldn't continue to send 20, 40, 50, 60, 80, 100 emails to them. It's not going to help you. It's going to water down your stats.
All right. Faith has a long one here. Faith says, I'm a solopreneur doing both sales and marketing. I use a cold email at SaaS to send emails for sales. They recommend originating email from either a different URL, such as my official website name.com, adding the my, or from a subdomain such as sales.websitename.com. Which is better for a cold sales email? A whole separate URL, which I worry would be worrisome to potential customers, or is it okay to send from a subdomain such as sales.websitename.com? Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. The subdomain is definitely connected to your domain. it's definitely connected, right? So it's connected on every level. It's connected on SEO. It's connected on everything you do. So I would not really say that that's going to help you really at all, to be very honest. It might build a little bit on the trust side. It would depend upon how you're doing cold email, which, by the way, I'm not totally against cold email. Just have the right audiences, have the right targeting. All that stuff should be in play. I would highly recommend using a different URL. And if you're sending, to be honest, you want to have multiples ready and in good health and expire stuff if you're having problems with them. So I would definitely recommend different URLs, because you're going to affect once they do sign up for your newsletter, they won't get it. They're not going to get it. So you don't want to create your own problem by sending from the same domain.
Gotcha. Would you recommend having those two, the different URL for cold or outreach, similar to the official one?
Definitely. So, or it could be something specific. For example, we sponsor a lot of conferences. We will buy the domain and say like ZeroBounceConferenceName.com. And then we're sending to all those people from that domain. We've warmed it up ahead of time. We've done a lot of work there, but we're doing those type of things to kind of build some trust on the domain. And then secondly, people do recognize the names. But yeah, I would definitely try to target, or, a lot of people use the .net, the .info, the .email. Those, when you start going into the different TLDs, .emails and things like that, you could start to get into a risky area where the trust goes down just because you're not using the .com or the .net or the .org. So if you can't get something really good, meaning don't go by .xyz, that's not going to help you. Go with a .com and buy something that's very similar to your name or close to it. Yeah.
Great. All right. Kay asks, our DMARC and DKIM and other certifications are all set, but our spam rates are still ludicrous. We're in B2B life sciences, meaning that some of our customers might open an email once every 2 to 3 years, but we still get churn. What do we do?
Sure. So separate DMARC, DKIM, and SPF. That will help your deliverability, but it's not going to create a magic bullet for you. So, and if this is helpful for everybody, all of these little items, BIMI, that's another one. It is not one thing that will give you your reputation. It is the sum of all things combined. So how clean is the list? What are your sending practices? How healthy is your domain? What's your reputation? DMARC, DKIM, SPF, BIMI, all these things. It's a compound effect, by the way. But going back to your question, if someone's opening emails every 2 to 3 years, I mean, gosh, that's terrible. But I would generally say, if you're telling me two things at the same time, our spam rates are ridiculous. First off, just define that if you can, and I'll define it for you. Spam rate might be you're in the spam folder or people are marking you as spam. So which one is it? If people are marking you as spam, you need to pull those people off. There are ways to know who is marking you as spam. So even if you didn't validate, there are what's called feedback loops, FBLs. They can be sent back to you to know who is sending your email to, who's marking you as spam. They will actually tell you in plain text, this is the email address that's marking you as spam. Pull that guy off, or validate the data, and hopefully we identify it. But get that stuff off. Yes.
I mean, I also got to think too, if the frequency is going to impact that, right? If somebody signs up and then they don't hear from you for a month, maybe if you have a once a month thing, they might say, I don't remember this. This is spam. But if you're, more frequently in front of them, maybe they'll recognize you and be more engaged.
Yeah. Also on the domain, right? You can't, just so everyone's aware, you can't send 1 million emails once a year. That's not going to fly. You have to consistently send stuff. You have to ramp it up, and you have to get to a point where now the mail servers start to anticipate your email. That's when you can send volume. So brand new domains, you can't just go send to it, by the way, back to that question on the cold sales emails. Absolutely not. You'll kill it. They'll kill it on day one. So you have to ramp stuff up, and you have to be thoughtful. So you have to be kind of weeks, if not months ahead of what you're trying to do.
Good advice, Brian. Thank you. Looks like the last question. What are some of the most common signs that an email database is suffering from decay? And how can brands proactively address these issues?
For me, it's the ROI, or the engagement rate on your campaigns. So obviously bounce rate, that's an obvious one. That's going to tell you what's going on. And if your bounce rate's high every time, by the way, suppression is not a good way to deal with bounces. Let me say that again. Suppression is not a good way to deal with bounces. It is a mandated way to deal with bounces because the ESPs don't like you now. So now your own sending platform doesn't like you. And by the way, if they really don't like you, they will move you into a lower quality sending infrastructure, lower quality IPs, lower quality everything else. And that's going to kill you on the deliverability too. So the ESP is trying to salvage you by moving you. But what are things that you can do to address the issue? Validate it and make sure the data is clean in the first place. So if you're getting it from a sales point of view, like I was saying, from these different tools, again, I'm not knocking them. They're just not focused on that because they won't survive. They need to sell quantity. You have to make sure you're just getting quality. So clean up the database and then make sure anything going into it is cleaned up as well. And monitor.
Right on. Well, the great questions and answers and a great presentation. Thank you, Ryan, for an amazing presentation.
Thank you.
And thanks again to ZeroBounce for sponsoring today's presentation. Audience, we truly value your feedback, so please click on the link that should be popping up on your screen shortly, and we will be posted. It'll also be posted in the chat. If you could fill out that short survey and share your thoughts on the session, it really helps us. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us today, and we can't wait to see you at our next Marketing Profs event.